Her key still fit the lock, but inside strangers were living in her home. Her mother had secretly sold the seaside villa she'd built from nothing, just to pay off her Addict brother's debt. This is the true story of Emily, a woman who trusted her family and watched them betray her in the cruelest way. Would you forgive someone who stole your future to fix their past? Tell us in the comments. The day I left home, I didn't slam the door. I just walked out with my suitcase, my silence, and a vow to never return. It was humid in Jacksonville that morning, the kind of summer heat that sticks to your skin and makes you question every decision. Emily stood at the threshold of her bedroom, one hand gripping the handle of a worn blue suitcase, the other still clutching a childhood photo she'd unearthed the night before. In the faded image, she was maybe 6, standing beside Zach on the shore of Jacksonville Beach. Her brother was swaddled in a towel, their mother bending down to shield him from the wind. Emily, off to the side, was dripping wet arms crossed tight over her tiny chest. No one had dried her. The silence in the house was suffocating. Zach had passed out hours ago after another party, sprawled shirtless across the living room couch, half a joint still in the ashtray beside him. Empty beer cans littered the carpet. Their mother, Sharon, moved quietly in the kitchen, stirring her coffee like nothing had changed. Emily hesitated, hoping for something, a question, a look, a reason to stay. Sharon didn't turn around. "Don't forget," she said, still facing the sink. "If you need money for Zach, you call, okay?" Emily didn't respond. She wanted to scream, to ask why it was always him. Why every scholarship, every award, every milestone she fought tooth and nail to reach was met with lukewarm praise, while Zach's every failure was met with rescue. But she'd had that conversation before, 1,000 times. Each one ended with Sharon's sigh and that tired refrain. "You don't understand what it's like to love someone who's struggling." So she stepped outside. No goodbye, no door slam, just a quiet click as the lock slid into place behind her. The Greyhound station smelled of grease and old air. She sat with her suitcase on her lap, the photo tucked safely between 2 textbooks, waiting for the bus to Tampa. Her fingers curled around the envelope containing her first scholarship check, $500. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Enough for a deposit on a shared apartment and maybe a used futon. Hours later, she arrived in Tampa. The sky was overcast, the city strange and gray. The apartment she'd arranged to sublet was in the back of a quiet neighborhood just off Fletcher Avenue. A Vietnamese widow named Ms. Lan greeted her with gentle eyes and a steaming bowl of rice porridge, even though Emily insisted she wasn't hungry. That night in her new room with peeling walls and one dusty window, she laid out her few belongings, a worn journal, a stack of college brochures, 3 packets of instant ramen, and the photo. She taped the photo to the wall above her mattress and stared at it until her eyes blurred. Zach had been their mother's son. And Emily, she'd been a shadow. Unacknowledged, necessary only by contrast. The ceiling was stained with water damage, and every time a neighbor closed their door, the whole floor trembled. But it was hers. This tiny, imperfect place was hers. In the quiet, she opened her journal and wrote slowly, deliberately, "One day I'll buy my own house by the sea. No one will take it from me." The words bled across the page with the weight of a promise. Her laptop pinged beside her. She blinked at the screen, disoriented, and clicked open the email. "Congratulations. Your application for the University Library Work-Study program has been approved." She exhaled, not in relief, not yet, but in recognition. It was a start. The first night in our beach house, the roof leaked, the fridge hummed, and Mason and I laughed like fools with wet socks. We'd closed on the house that afternoon. A crooked white villa half sinking into the mangroves of Key West with sun-warped shutters and a porch that moaned with every step. It was ugly in the daylight and worse in the rain, but to me, it was everything. By midnight, the storm rolled in with ocean fury. Wind howled through the cracked window panes, and water dripped in erratic rhythm from a sagging beam in the ceiling. Our mattress was still on the floor. Boxes sat unopened in corners. The fridge refused to shut completely unless you kicked it. Still, Mason danced barefoot across the flooded kitchen with 2 mugs of cheap wine humming a Sinatra song off-key, and I laughed until my stomach hurt. That night, soaked and exhausted, we weren't just homeowners, we were survivors of the long, brutal climb from nothing. It wasn't long ago I'd been eating ramen alone in Tampa, studying spreadsheets in a library basement. Now I was the co-founder of Wave Trace, a sustainable coastal travel startup gaining traction. Mason was the soul of the operation branding genius, fluent in charm, with a wild optimism that made strangers sign up for kayak tours at trade shows. I handled the gritty back-end permits budgeting negotiations. I'd learned the hard way to read contracts with suspicion, to calculate margin with precision. I didn't trust easily, but I trusted Mason. And maybe I wanted to believe I could trust again. 6 weeks into renovations, I ran into Janet Lowell at the South Florida Eco Business Expo. We hadn't seen each other since undergrad. She was sleeker now, tailored navy suit, minimal jewelry, a legal pad tucked under one arm like it was a weapon. She blinked twice before recognition softened her face. Emily Hart Janet. Wow, what are you doing here, corporate law? You tourism tech. We bought a house down here. Total mess. But it's ours. She raised a brow, smiling. You put it under an LLC? I hope I hesitated. It's under my name. Mason and I bought it jointly. Janet shook her head. Look, Florida's homestead exemption is decent, but if you're running a business, protect the asset. Put the property under your LLC. Trust me, dreams need lawyers, not just passion. The phrase hit something in me. Years ago, a professor had said that in passing during a lecture. I remembered scribbling it into the margins of my notebook and underlining it twice. Back then, it felt cynical. Now it felt like armor. I called our accountant the next day. Within a week, the property was officially under Emily Hart, Inc. I uploaded the notarized deed to 3 digital vaults and saved backups offline. When I told Mason, he grinned and mock saluted me. Remind me never to try to outmaneuver you in Monopoly. We celebrated with greasy tacos and overpriced rum punch at a dive bar on the pier. That night, I felt like I'd outpaced my past. No more silence. No more standing in shadows while someone else got the towel. 2 months later, as we packed for my consulting trip to Europe, 3 months, 6 cities, potential investor meetings, Mason handed me a list of emergency contacts. I added one more. My mom, I said, holding up the spare key. Just in case. He hesitated. You sure? I nodded. I want to trust her. Just once. I left the key on the kitchen counter with a sticky note. Only for emergencies. Please water the succulents. Later that evening, while checking my inbox before boarding, a subject line popped up. Congratulations, EU Blue Coast project approved. I smiled and shut the laptop. The house, the trip, the future, it was all unfolding. What could possibly go wrong? The key still fit, but everything inside was gone, including the photos on the wall. Emily stood in the narrow entryway, the salty Key West breeze pressing gently against her back as she gripped the doorknob. The front door creaked open like it always had, the hinges still groaning in protest. For one surreal second, she thought maybe everything was fine. But the couch was missing. The bookshelf she and Mason had assembled over 2 agonizing evenings was gone. No more chipped coffee table, no rug, no dining chairs. Just echoes. She stepped inside, heart pounding. The succulents on the kitchen sill were bone dry. A faint outline on the wall marked where their framed photo collage had once hung. Her and Mason on the beach. The first night of renovation. That ridiculous shot of them painting the living room and getting more on each other than on the walls. Gone. A stranger's voice startled her. Can I help you? Emily turned. A man, maybe in his late 50s, stood barefoot at the hallway entrance holding a dripping surfboard. He wore a damp tank top and a puzzled look. I live here, she said, her voice cracking mid-sentence. This is my house. He raised his eyebrows, concerned but calm. I bought this place last month. From a Sharon Hart? Her name was on the deed. The name hit like a fist to the chest. Emily blinked hard, then stepped back as if the floor might give way beneath her. She fumbled for her phone, barely managing to keep her grip. The man, Jeff, he introduced himself, offered to show her the paperwork. Emily declined. She didn't need to see it. She knew the shape of this betrayal before it finished unfolding. In the car parked a block away, she sat in silence with the air conditioner blasting. Her thumb hovered over her mother's contact before she pressed call. Sharon answered on the second ring. Hi, sweetheart. Did you sell my house? Her voice was low flat. A pause. Then Emily did. You. Sell. My house. There was a sigh. I had to. Zach was in serious danger. You were gone for months. Loan sharks were threatening to kill him. Emily stared ahead, unblinking. You sold my house, I did what I had to. He's your brother. This family. This family. Her voice cracked open. You think that word gives you the right to steal from me? I didn't steal. I signed. I did what I thought you would do if you had a heart. You sold something that didn't belong to you, she shouted. It belonged to this family. No, it belonged to me, she roared. You knew what this house meant. I told you before I left, I said don't make any decisions without my signature. There was silence on the other end. You never replied. Emily said quieter now, but trembling. Because you already knew what you were going to do. I needed to save Zach. Emily's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. You didn't save him. You bought him another lie with someone else's truth. Sharon exhaled shakily. You're so cold, Emily. You always have been. Emily drew a breath, and when she spoke again, her voice had chilled to steel. Then you've made it a legal problem. I'm calling my lawyer. She hung up. Back at the hotel, her hands still shaking, she opened her laptop. Mason's name flashed on her phone screen. She ignored it for now. In the silence, she navigated to a secure cloud folder labeled Asset Protection. Clicked once, entered the passphrase. There it was. A scanned PDF, crisp and official, watermarked and notarized. Property owner Emily Hart Inc. Sole proprietor, Emily Hart, date of transfer. 11 months ago, Emily leaned back in her chair, heart racing. Let them try to take it. She'd planned for this. She just hadn't wanted to believe it would be necessary. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I forwarded an email with a timestamp and a digital signature. Downtown Miami was a blur of glass and steel, the streets vibrating with the usual weekday rhythm of lawyers, bankers, and espresso carts. Emily sat on the 12th floor of a nondescript high-rise, her hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes fixed on the frosted glass door that read, Lowell and Pierce, PA. The office smelled like eucalyptus and old paper. It was quiet, intentionally so. Janet Lowell entered with the same sharp presence she'd always carried, straight spine heels clicking softly against the floor, no-nonsense eyes that missed nothing. Emily stood. Thanks for making time. Janet nodded once and gestured to the chair across from her desk. You said it was urgent. Let's get started. Emily pulled out her laptop, clicked through her secure folder, and laid out the digital trail. The LLC registration. The deed transfer dated 11 months prior. Notarized via video call and a time-stamped video of the signing process with Emily stating, I am transferring this property into Emily Hart Inc. to protect my business assets. Janet leaned in, expression unreadable. You kept everything. You told me to, Emily said. Own it legally before you own it emotionally. I didn't get it then. I do now. Janet reviewed the buyer's paperwork. Next, Jeff had emailed a scanned copy at Emily's request. It listed Sharon Hart as the seller, the signature fluid and confident, but Janet only needed 10 seconds before shaking her head. This contract's void. She wasn't the owner. The notary was fake, see the seal. It's not state compliant, and this forged signature? She tapped her pen. That's a felony. Emily let out a slow breath. Her fists unclenched. What's next? Janet smiled just barely. Now we file. Fraudulent conveyance, forgery, real estate fraud. I'll draft the reports you'll need to sign a sworn affidavit. 2 hours later, the complaint was filed with the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation, the local real estate fraud unit, and the Monroe County Sheriff's Office. Janet was already arranging a cease and desist to the real estate firm that handled the transaction. At 4:12 p.m., Emily's phone buzzed. Mom. She answered without emotion. Emily Sharon began, her voice already ragged. What is this? I got a call from some investigator saying I might be charged. Emily stared out the window at Biscayne Bay. You forged my name. You stole property. This is what happens. I did it to save Zach. You did it to avoid facing what he's become. Emily replied. You did it because you thought I'd be too far away, too quiet, too much of a daughter to stop you. You're making this ugly. Emily's voice went ice cold. No, you did that when you sold what wasn't yours. A pause, then the switch. I didn't mean to hurt you, Emily. I thought you'd understand. You've always been so rigid, so cold. You hold grudges. This isn't a grudge. This is the law. Sharon sniffled. You're really pressing charges, your own mother? You're not just my mother, Emily said. You're a person who committed fraud. That's what the law sees. And that's what I see now, too. She hung up. The next morning, Sharon was served a formal summons at her Jacksonville address. The real estate office halted the transfer, freezing any pending ownership registration. The police opened a preliminary investigation. Emily watched it all unfold from Janet's office, where the air was now thick with quiet triumph. Janet slid a manila folder across the table, a printed copy of the fraud report sealed and ready for legal proceedings. This was never hers to sell, Janet said, leaning back. Now she knows it too. She didn't apologize. She sobbed. There's a difference. It had been 3 weeks since the filing, since Sharon was served. Since Emily drew the line that should have been drawn a decade earlier. The villa in Key West was quieter now, the sea humming in the distance like an old lullaby. The salt in the air no longer tasted like possibility, just reality. Voicemails came in waves. First pleading, then blaming, then silence followed by more pleading. You're destroying what's left of this family, Sharon said in one. Over a house, over some money. Zach's your brother. He's in danger. Then came the crying, wordless sobs, minutes of nothing but static and breath and a mother's despair. Emily deleted most of them without listening. Some nights she hovered her thumb over the play button but never pressed. Until one night at 2:13 a.m. the phone buzzed again and she picked up. There was a pause before the voice on the other end broke through. Emily. She said nothing. I didn't know what else to do, Sharon whispered. I was just trying to save him. Emily stared out the window at the moonlight washing over the palms. And you lost both of us by trying to save one of us. You don't mean that. I do. A silence settled. Then he's gone. Zach. No one knows where he is. Someone said Mexico, but I don't know. I haven't heard anything. I just wanted to keep him alive. Emily's heart clenched, not out of sympathy, but exhaustion. And I was what collateral you were always so strong. I thought no. Emily interrupted. You thought I'd take it. Like always. Like when I was 18 and lost my scholarship and you told me not to blame Zach even though he impersonated me and declined the award out of spite. That was years ago. And you said don't blame him. He was young. Her voice dropped to a cold hush. Well, I was young too. Sharon sobbed again. I just want my family back. Emily closed her eyes. There's nothing left to get back. The call ended with a silence that lingered far too long before Sharon finally hung up. The next evening, the doorbell didn't ring. The security cam pinged and Emily walked to the screen. Outside the gate stood Sharon, suitcase in hand, sweater half falling off one shoulder. Her face looked drawn, unfamiliar. Not maternal, not villainous, just lost. Mason came to stand beside Emily. Do you want me to? No, she said quietly. Sharon didn't shout, didn't bang. She just stood there, eyes searching the windows. Emily stood still watching. Eventually, Sharon turned and walked down the gravel path, her suitcase dragging behind her wheels, crunching faintly in the evening hush. Emily didn't move until the gate swung shut behind her mother. That she said turning to Mason was the last time I'll ever hear her voice. She took everything once. Now I give it all away and it finally feels mine. The villa by the sea no longer whispered of betrayal. It laughed. It echoed with footsteps, voices, stories. A boy named Liam sprinted barefoot across the sand toward the fire pit, clutching driftwood like treasure. Behind him trailed 2 other teens, their arms full of kindling and snacks. Emily sat on the porch steps, watching them with a warmth that softened her bones. A year had passed. The walls had been repainted. The roof reinforced, the garden cleared and replanted. What had once been a silent house of ghosts was now alive with purpose. Emily had launched the Ocean Resilience Program 6 months ago. Free workshops for teens navigating grief abandonment or the general ache of being too young to carry too much. The idea had come slowly, seeded in sleepless nights, and grown through action. Mason, ever the grounding force, handled logistics and grant applications, while Emily led the workshops. They taught wilderness skills, first aid, ocean safety, and emotional resilience. Things Emily had once begged the world to teach her. Liam had been their first participant. His parents' bitter divorce had left him angry, flailing. He arrived on the first day, silent and skeptical arms, crossed eyes wary. Now he ran like the waves answered only to him. They gathered around the fire that evening, the smell of marshmallows and salt in the air. The group settled into their usual rhythm stories. Laughter, long silences filled only by the crackle of flame. Then Liam asked, his voice tentative, "Did you ever hate your mom?" The question floated into the nightlight and heavy all at once. Emily didn't answer right away. She stirred the embers with a stick, watching the sparks drift upward. "I hated what she did," she said finally, "but I chose to build, not burn." Liam nodded. He didn't press. He didn't need to. Later, after the fire was down to glowing coals and the kids had drifted off to their bunks, Emily climbed the stairs to her room. The photo had hung in the same place since she was 20, a faded image of Zach and Sharon towels draped over them at Jacksonville Beach. Emily had never been in the frame. For years, she'd kept it there as a reminder of pain, of fuel. Tonight, she took it down. From the drawer, she pulled a new photograph, her Liam and a dozen other teens soaked from the ocean holding surfboards and beaming like they'd just invented joy. She framed it carefully and hung it where the old one had been. The waves hummed outside. Mason appeared behind her, slipping his arms around her waist. They didn't speak. This house will never be taken again because now it belongs to more than just me. Betrayal may have shaken her foundation, but it did not break her. What was once a house tainted by loss became a sanctuary rebuilt on strength, clarity, and choice. Justice wasn't swift, but it was precise, delivered not in rage, but in preparation and resolve. Like a tide wearing down, stone truth prevailed without noise, but with permanence. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth.